in this time of the year where we are definitely in a deep recession, and it's not really improving that well. Unemployment is still at 9.1. It went down and went back up. People are beginning to really hurt here in Manchester. People are losing their jobs. We're really starting to feel it now. So the recession is starting to even hit this part of the neighborhood. Next year, we all know that there is a new contract that needs to be renegotiated for the city employees and the school employees. Some people on the board who are there now feel that only certain things should be negotiated and not the entire contract. Some think that this is not the time for us to discuss the Yager-Decker. I, as a citizen, feel that when you renegotiate a contract, you renegotiate the whole contract. What is your feeling on the employee contracts here in the city and the Yager-Decker?
Sure. Just a little bit of background on some of the things you discussed. I'm a state representative and I sit on the Labor Committee. I am the vice chair. One of my positions as a vice chairman is to sit on the Employment Securities Advisory Board. So once a month I meet with the chairman or the department head, if you will, the commissioner of an assistant commissioner and many staff members of employment security. So we monitor what's going on with the unemployment. I think the difference in this recession versus other ones you and I have seen, maybe a year, 18 months after 9/11, 1991, when we had all the banks fail here, that lasted about a year and a half. This one's going on over 3 years. So people who have a little bit of a cushion or can get by, we've had shorter time frames of a recession. This one's going so long. You're right. It's really starting to hurt terribly, far beyond what previous recessions have been. And yes, unemployment is still up. The estimate by Mayor Gatzis is that we could be looking at a 14.5% tax increase given all the existing spending that we know are expenses that we're going to have.
So that's before we even touch the budget.
Correct. Based on current revenue that we have now, if we were to copy the same revenue and not think that revenue is going to go up at all from registrations of cars or anything like that, if we assume level income, then, and we look at all our expenses, our current expenses, that we would have a 14.5% increase. Something has to change. So your question about the contracts. There are a number of things. Yager-Decker is one of them. Yager-Decker is a company that was hired, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, and they were hired to try to put some organization to the different levels of employment in the city. You had people at the school district, you had people within the city, and what they got paid and what their pay grade was and what the description of their job duties and salaries were all over the place. So there was different parity between people doing the same job, getting different wages, maybe people who are new getting higher wages than someone who had been there for 5 years. So Yager-Decker put this plan in place. And many people were a little nervous about it at the time, but what it does is it basically guarantees certain raises. It is time to look at that. One of my competitors said, this isn't the time. Well, gee, I don't know when the time is. We've been kicking a can down the road knowing that eventually, year after year after year, as these raises increase, they increase higher than inflation. Right now, we have an inflation level of the last 10 years of 26%. But we have a 50% increase in our expenses here in the city. So there is a disparity there. Every part of the contracts need to be looked at. One of the biggest problems, if you will, if you consider it a problem, some may not, I do, consider it a problem that benefits, the cost of health insurance and pensions will be more than the cost of salaries next year. And that's not the way it really is. It's usually 60-40, 40% benefits, 60% salary. So we have a problem. One of the problems, I'll give you an example of one part of a contract that's a problem. We have a contract that in the contract said, for health benefits, this group of people will receive XYZ 1, 2, 3 health care plan. And that was put out by one of the major insurance carriers. That increases every couple of years. And it had a significant increase, that ABC 1, 2, 3. I don't remember what it is. I'm using that as a mechanism here. Well, that is seeing substantial double-digit increases. That can't stay. You need to get that out. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to eviscerate or take away the benefits from those people. What it means is you have to go out to competitive bid. You all know this, the law of supply and demand. Mm-hmm. Okay? Someone is going to say, wow, the Manchester School District or the Manchester Fire Department, the Manchester Police, that's a great account to have from health insurance. We could bid more competitively. Case in point, our own executive counselor, Raymond Resorick. He was up doing his job as executive counsel, and the state brought in a plan to increase the health insurance for the state employees by 3%. And everyone's like, oh, okay, that's not a bad increase. He's like, hold it. Not only will I won't accept 3%, I want to put it out to bid. What do you think the actual final plan was?
1.5%?
2% decrease. 2% decrease.
That's a 1%. Wow.
Right. So he went from a 3% increase to a 2% decrease, a delta of 5%.
Well, times are hard.
So, and the insurance company wanted the business. Mm-hmm. So to be able to say you must open your contract, we may very well be able to save 5, 7% with identical benefits. I'm not saying we can, but you don't know unless you try.
It's worth the try.
So my opinion is it is very difficult to make a enormous cut. You can't go after these benefits and tell someone that they're going to pay triple what they were paying before because their budget isn't ready for it. This needs to be done in a 1 year or 2 year or 3 year period. But we do have a problem with the benefits package provided in the city. One of the other things, and I've heard this information, I've never seen it on a piece of paper, and I like to see it, but I believe it's accurate. The rate of usage in the city of Manchester for the city employees on health insurance is something like double what the average rate of a group is. So they're using it much more than the average group. With low deductibles, with low copays, you know, you have that the
restraint.
Well, yeah, there's no reason I'll just go to the doctor. Now, to the employee's credit, there is one mechanism that I believe a number of them are using very effectively. If they need a procedure done, they can go on a website and find out where it's more competitive. And the city has said if it's X amount here and it's X amount here, and this one's cheaper, and you go there, we'll help share some of the savings with you. And I think that's been a very positive thing. But a real short, one-sentence answer to your question, do I believe Yarger-Decker needs to be reviewed and possibly removed? Yes, I do. Do I believe that all aspects of the contracts need to be reviewed? Yes, I do. Not only do that, I think they need to be put online for people to see.
I totally agree. To me, that is what would be in the people's best interest. When we in the private sector negotiate a contract, when you negotiate a contract, and renew a contract, you don't say, well, I'm not going to discuss that, I'm not going to you don't pick it apart. You negotiate the contract.
Well, what you're talking to is, I believe what you're talking to is Alderman O'Neill, Alderman at Large O'Neill, put together a group. It's a group of 5 members from labor and 5 members from management. And they come together to discuss something. And the concept is, we're really not in a negotiating room where, you know, you start high, I start low, and we figure out in the middle. We talk about some of the things that we need to discuss. Now, I know Alderman O'Neill wanted to only define it to benefits. That's a problem. There are things in the firefighter's contract that I have a problem with. It's called a third alarm part of the contract, where when a third alarm is pulled, these people, firefighters all must come in. Wherever they are, they need to come in. Well, obviously some can if they're out of town or this, that. Apparently everybody gets the pay.
Even though they don't come in.
That's what I'm being told. Again, I have not read this. I'm being told that this is what it is in the contract. I've requested copies of the contracts. I have not seen them. That's not fair, and I don't think you'll find one firefighter who doesn't show up thinks that they should get paid.
Here's another good question that it really bothers me and a lot of people in this city. Our police department, when they do special detail, they are not working for the city. Although the pay goes to the city. If you want to have special detail for protecting your office or something, for example, you go to the city, and you pay the city, and the city pays our men. What bothers a lot of people is that the private sector pays for that special duty, the cost, the wage cost, but it does not pay for the pension It comes out of taxpayers' money. Do you feel that special duty that's supposed to be paid for by the private sector, that we, as taxpayers, should pay for that, bringing up that cost of that pension?
No. As a legislator, there was a bill that came in front of the New Hampshire House this year, and what it has done is it was about pension reform. The pension reform bill basically said if you've been doing this for, I think, if you've been doing it for over 10 years, this is the way it is, the state will continue that. There's a belief that there's something, there's an agreement that was made, and those people have based some of their pension based on that income, so we should keep it that way. All new hires will not be able to receive a pension based on the extra duty. If they want to work all they want and get that extra money, I'm very happy that they're willing to do that, and they can have every penny of the extra duty money. But new hires, it will not be part of their pension, so the citizens will not be subsidizing a pension based on that revenue or based on that extra income. And all existing people, I believe, up to 10 who have been in the system up to 10 years will no longer get any additional. The existing is okay, additional, and anyone over 10 years, they're still getting a pension based on that.
To me, that's as fair.
Now, unfortunately, the unions, I believe, have filed a lawsuit
to the state?
Yes, against the state on that.
To me, that's a fair reform because the pensions, first of all, that money is invested, and the economy being as bad as we are, they're losing money too. The stock market.
Actually, that's wrong.
Oh, it is?
Just
Go ahead,
came out.
correct me then.
The firefighters and the police officers do not get Social Security.
They don't?
Like many people. No, they do not have that ability. So that's why they have this pension plan. This is the only pension plan they get unless they have, some firefighters have other jobs, other duties, and they can possibly get a pension there. Most of the police officers do not. Some people do. I know there's one firefighter here who's also a police sergeant in Auburn. So they have other avenues, but firefighters and police officers do not receive Social Security.
Is this a state law or a federal law?
I believe it's federal. It's mostly, I think every state can do what they want, but that's the way it is here in New Hampshire.
You think that would change, though?
Well,
because in the private sector, you still have to pay Social Security.
Well, there's been some discussions on whether or not those individuals should go back on to a 401k plan, a defined benefit plan, as they call it. But believe it or not, this year the pension plan report came out, and it's doing extremely well.
Well, that's good.
I believe, I don't want to say the number, Glenn, because I remember reading it 2 weeks ago, and it was double digits, maybe 13 to 18% return. It could have been even more. These numbers of 13 or 23% return. So actually, the amount of money that the state must have to fulfill all those obligations, it was around 60%. We didn't have enough, and that's what the complaint was. I believe they made up a significant percentage this year. So the fund did very well this year. Believe it or not, the stock market and many more complex things that they invest in have done better than expected.
That's good. They must have some good brokers. We need to hire those brokers.
It's a very complex group of people that deal with a lot more things than just buying a few Walmart shares here and there.
Now, well, let's go on the city's infrastructure and the 10-year plan. Now, we all know when we plan a 10-year plan, in this city, the way the way our charter commissions it is, the planning board, the zoning board, the board of aldermen, the school board, everybody involved comes out with a 10-year plan, and they put it all together. Now, the last 10-year plan was done back in 1998. Well, here we are, 2011. They've been working on a 10-year plan for almost 7 years now. Normally, they do it every 5 years, start working on it. And as of today, the planning board and the zoning board have voted in favor of the new 10-year plan. But somehow we can't get the board of mayor and aldermen to vote an up or down agreement.
Are you talking about
a
master plan?
A master.
Or talking about a infrastructure plan? Because it's two different
I'm talking
things.
about the city's 10-year master plan.
Okay. I don't know what a 10-year master plan is. I know what a 10-year highway plan is, which talks about how frequently they're going to pave what streets and what roads. and that 10-year plan. The master plan, I believe, has much more complex things. They take existing parcels of unused land and how they can be developed. There's many people that believe that. I'll give an example in Ward 6 in my. Well, it's really not in my district. It's more Ward 5 now. The road from Hanover Street to the 93 Route 93 interchange west down to East Side Plaza, if you will, and that there's a few residential homes that should pretty much become a commercial zone now. There's other zones. You know, the Gold Street problem is a big problem over there on the west side. What to do with that? Why the aldermen haven't brought it to their plan, I don't know if it's set up in committees or not. One of the problems I have, if you wouldn't mind me taking a little segue here, one of the problems I have with the aldermanic meetings comes from what happens up at the State House and what I've learned there over the last 9 years being a state representative. We utilize a parliamentary procedure where everyone waits to be called on. If someone says something you don't like, you don't interrupt, you got to wait. It might be 3 more people to get to you before you get to respond to that person, but that's the way it is. And we get to ask questions and we hear answers. We can't interrupt. We have to wait. And if a complex issue comes up, the chairman will have the entire committee listen. And then they'll say, this may be too complex to hear. We need more testimony. We're going to take a group of 5. We're going to have a subcommittee of 5. That subcommittee of 5 has its meetings, gets everybody's input, and then comes back with a recommendation to the full board committee of the State House. Well, I don't see a lot of that happening. I see a lot of discussion at the aldermanic level. I don't know if it's for TV viewing they do it, but there seems to be arguments back and forth between certain aldermen. There seems to be interrupting gone at times. They don't seem to follow motions when they need to. Now, there's a motion on the floor. It's second, there's discussion, and then you're getting ready to vote, and the discussion's over, but there's more discussion coming up. If I'm on the board, I'd like to bring back that real process of you do all the hard work and the arguing and discussing on the committee side. When the committee chairman brings a report to the alderman, the committee voted 5-1 to do this, 4-2, 3-1, 3-2 to do this, that, and the other thing. Then that committee chairman will answer all the questions of what happened in that committee. That's a much more structured way of doing it. I think some of these aldermanic meetings go on far too long.
I think that one of the problems with the committees, and I've been watching that several years now, and it seems to be getting worse. I don't know if it's because of problems, there are more problems, they have more to discuss, but they delegate a certain amount of time for these committees, and they can't get their work done.
Well, that's another thing.
So they're behind.
They do set the committees right before an aldermanic meeting, and they don't have enough time to squeeze in. Another thing that I'm sick and tired of hearing from aldermen is, well, I only received my package on Friday. Well, it's Tuesday. Saturday, Sunday, Monday. You got 3 days to review it. You can read it Saturday and Sunday and call the City Hall on Monday if you have any problems. And I see inconsistencies. I saw Alderman O'Neill always saying, well, I'm not ready to vote on this. We have to wait 2 weeks to hold over for the name, or we're not ready to go. Yet he brought a proposal and been out of shape because no one had seen it before that evening, and then they brought it forth. That's not the way to effectively govern. If you have a proposal, you should make sure all of your fellow aldermen have an opportunity to see it ahead of time and ask you questions beforehand, instead of just saying, okay, I'm passing this out here, I want everyone's opinion.
That happens too often, Will.
It does, and it's not the way it should work.
It happens to both sides of the aisle. We know that our local politics is supposed to be nonpartisan, but we know better. It happens on both sides.
What is both sides?
It happens.
You have one Republican, one independent, and the rest Democrats.
Well, we also have a mayor that's a Republican, if you look at it. But what I'm saying is it happens a lot, not just to the Democrats or the Republicans. It happens to both. I think it's time that some of these people grow up. The rules are rules. Like you said, rules are rules. It is common sense that they receive their packet the Friday before. So that's not the day. But what bothers me more is when if a alderman comes in and makes a proposal right away, you haven't even seen it. It's not even on the packet. That's not right. That's not right.
I will agree.
One more thing that bothers me a lot is at the aldermanic meetings is every alderman was elected by their peers in their respective wards. And the aldermen at large were elected by all of their peers in all the wards. I think that if an alderman wants to propose a motion, that somebody else should not be discouraging that person, that it's not going to pass. They need to go through the process. That alderman, all aldermen have the same amount of power and the same amount of right to do the job that they were elected for. And sometimes you see people push and say, well, you're never going to get a second. Well, I'm going to veto this. I'm going to do that. That needs to stop. That's not healthy for our city.
No, I will tell you a piece of advice was given to me the first year I was elected as a state representative, because sometimes you feel, wow, I got elected. I can make laws. I can propose laws. And you think, wow, I got all this power. You have a tremendous amount of power as a legislator in the State House, period. Mm-hmm. Outside the State House, you're an average citizen like everybody else. You have no other rights or benefits than anybody else. If you get a complaint from someone as a state representative, a constituent, you can call the department head of a certain department and say, I'd like you to look into this. You can't demand they do something. You can't demand they do a favor for somebody. You can't do that. It's against the rules. I think the same thing goes with the aldermen. They have a tremendous amount of power inside City Hall, not outside. Mm-hmm. No power. No power to tell a principal to turn off a light by a flag. No authority to tell somebody that to stop a construction project because they want something different than the school board does. That's what both Representative Alderman at Large O'Neill and Lopez do. You have no authority. If you got a problem with a constituent and they say, we got a problem in Ward 6 with here, you can call up the highway department and say, can you please look into this? This is what someone has said. Mm-hmm. You can't say, I want this done. Don't you know who I am? I want this done. That doesn't work. It shouldn't happen.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you 100%. And that's exactly how it should be.
And what bothers me is when, to me, I'll answer your question. Another thing that bothers me the most is that, as you said, they get elected by their peers or the people who showed up to vote for them. But when it comes to amendments to the charter, what bothers me the most is when Mayor Ginta had a vote regarding the tax cap, okay, or the spending cap, however you want to call it. The appropriate number of signatures were obtained. The wording was reviewed and inaccurate. So then the aldermen had to vote in favor of it to put it on the ballot. And a number of them refused. They refused to let the citizens of Manchester vote. It was done within the rules of the charter. I think they all should have been kicked out of office for anyone who voted against it for not living up to the oath. When you get sworn in as an alderman, you agreed to abide by the charter, and it was a complete violation of the charter. Now the charter passed, which is a good thing. Unfortunately, all the aldermen that voted against it were also elected. So that's another problem I have. Thinking, I had one alderman tell me once, they elect me. They elect me to make the decisions. I'll make the decisions. I know better than they do. Well, I'm sorry. I will never think that I know better than the people that would vote for me.
I have been told that by certain aldermen, too, that we were elected to the job and we're doing it. And I keep saying, wait a minute here. Now, I guess what I was saying was, as an alderman, if you become an alderman, if the mayor entertains a motion,
yes,
you have a right to make a motion. Somebody else should not say, don't make that motion. It's your right.
Correct.
Follow the process. That's what
correct.
I was saying. And number two is, to the subject you just brought up, that is so true. They have no power more than anybody else other than within when they have the aldermanic meetings. I totally agree. But too many times an alderman comes in that night and makes a proposal, and no other alderman, there are 15 people around that table, including with the mayor, nobody else knows about it. That is wrong. That is surprise. And how can you make a decision that night if you don't know what's going on?
It depends on the complexity. If it's a very simple issue, they're not going to meet for another 2 weeks, or in the summer a month. If it's a relatively simple issue, you should be able to explain yourself with some information, especially in a situation where you think it's not in any way controversial, that people wouldn't have a problem with it. Those are simple decisions that sometimes the board has to make, they can do. I have no problem with those things that just come up. Other things with technology, with getting the information over to the alderman, getting it over to the clerk, there's no reason the clerk can't get it out via email to these individuals for review. So you're right. I think sometimes it's done as a ploy. Individuals will go to their friends on the board and say, hey, I got this, and I really want you to do me a favor, and if I got 6 of you, all I need is 2 more votes. That's the rule. Don't you know that, the rule in the aldermanic chambers? All you need is 8, and hopefully the mayor won't veto. That's all you need is 8. So they try to get what they need ahead of time. So I won't do that unless it's something extremely simple.
Going back to the tax cap,
Yes.
I think what bothered a lot of people is that in 2009, the people voted 52.3% in favor of the tax cap.
Mm-hmm.
But then, weeks later, the majority of our aldermen decided to take it to the Supreme Court after the people had already said what they wanted. And then it took us 2 years to get it on the ballot. The charter specifically says that citizens have a right to petition the government and put it on referendum. Any comment?
Well, yes. The comment is you're completely right. I believe that there are a certain number of aldermen cater to a very small sector of the population in Manchester. They saw a spending cap or a tax cap as a threat to those who would like to see budgets increase every year. What they didn't count on is the senior citizens who have lived here most of their lives and who are on a fixed income want exactly that. It's unfortunate that so many of the people in the city don't realize what went on in some of those meetings and didn't really understand what they saw and to what extent certain aldermen went through and the Democrat Party went through to get that tax cap off the books to make sure they could find it unconstitutional or what. It has finally passed the state. It was, we had to pass on a state law on a state basis. To their credit, a number of proposals going back 10 years to make the school district a department was found unconstitutional. They were right, believe it or not. And so I propose a law and have now a law in place that would allow for a vote to allow the school district to be a department of the city.
But the Board of Aldermen would not allow it on the ballot this time around.
No, they wouldn't even allow it to go to a hearing, which was even more ridiculous. They wouldn't even allow the people an ability for a hearing. It is unbelievable, the hubris of some of the aldermen that they believe that they're going to take care of his special interests and do what they want versus what the citizens want. And that's why, another reason why Joe and I decided to run. We sit there and are engaged and know what's going on. We watch it on television. We sit in their aldermanic meetings at times. And it's just ridiculous how transparent they are to see why they're voting the way they're voting. I don't believe that a majority of the sitting aldermen vote on behalf of the citizens. I believe they vote on behalf of special interests.
Now, where the charter states that at every regular aldermanic meeting, as every regular school board meeting, there's to be allowed at least a minimum of 30 minutes for public comment. Now, when Ray Rezork was our mayor, it was 2 minutes. Now it is 3. But in his office, within 48 hours, you either got an email, which wasn't that common then, a phone call or a letter to ask if the issue had been resolved. When Rezork left office, Baines, Ginta, and now Gatsis have been the past mayors since then. We're down to 3 minutes. We're up to 3 minutes. But you never get a response. And they wonder why some people keep reappearing, because the problems don't get solved. If you're alderman, will you try to pass a rule saying that the elected officials need to contact their public constituents? If someone from Ward 10 goes to that public comment and says, I have this problem in my ward, then that alderman and the mayor should contact that person and see what they can do to solve that problem, to show some responsibility, that they do care about their constituents and that they will at least try to connect. There's no connect.
I didn't know that was the rule prior to.
It was.
I believe it makes sense now. That's why they take someone's name and address so you can look into a certain issue. Yes, Glenn, there's a couple things that I would make changes to if I were to become an alderman. The first would be to make sure that people were contacted. Now, sometimes people just have a general complaint about the city. It's very difficult to say I don't like all the potholes all over the city, but to say I have a pothole the size of a moon crater on my street, can you do something about it? I believe the alderman in that ward, as well as the mayor or the alderman at large, should at least make sure that that's addressed. So I have no problem with that. I think it is part of that constituent service that people talk about. That's why you are getting